Today we are going to start out by doing a quick overview of what Selenium is. Now, whenever I say Selenium, you should always think Selenium Webdriver project. They're one and the same. The original project name was Selenium, and then about 3, maybe 4 years ago now, they acquired the Webdriver project. So it's basically the same thing. They're synonyms. We're going to start by installing and learning how to use Selenium Ide. Selenium Ide, IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, and it's just basically a fancy way of saying a recorder and player, script playback. So today, what we're going to do is we are going to learn how to use it. We're going to learn some very, very basics of automation. And by the end, when you leave this class, you'll have your first test case done. So you'll have your first automation, you'll have your first homework, and you'll know how to automate. So you'll leave knowing how to automate stuff. In fact, I'll show you a little trick that you can do, that you can actually take the stuff that you record in Selenium Ide, and you'll be able to export it as Python or Java or whatever it is that you desire, so you can actually write code by the end of this class. There's a magical capability that will let you output actual code that you can play back, which is pretty cool. Day 2, we're going to get a little bit more intensely into Selenium commands. We're also going to talk about matching text. I don't know, most of you have probably know what an asterisk means, like globbing, right? If you ever used any kind of command line tool. But not a lot of people are familiar with regular expressions, so we're going to be talking a lot about regular expressions. Regular expressions are useful for automation whenever you have a lot of data and you need to extract stuff from the page, or when you are not sure of what kind of data you're going to get, like you have a general idea, like I know I'm going to get a 16-digit alphanumerical code, right? But you need to assert that you got it. You need to check that you got it, right? But it's always different. But it's always 16 digits, and it's always alphanumeric. Like, how do you describe that? Well, you use regular expressions. So we're going to learn regular expressions. We're going to learn more Selenium IDE commands. I'll give you a very quick overview of everything you can do in Selenium/Webdriver. Day 3, we're going to talk more about HTML. If you know HTML, great. I'm not going to bore you with 3 hours of look at this tag means something or other. The reason we're going to talk about HTML is because we're going to be talking about locators, and that's how Selenium, it's how Selenium is able to find the things you see on the web page, right? So you can't just say Selenium, hey, go find a button. That's not really how Selenium understands things. Instead, it understands one of the following 3 methods. So it understands either IDs and names, it understands CSS, and it understands XPath. And if I'm completely honest, IDs and names are actually part of CSS, so it really understands just CSS and XPath. It also understands DOM. I don't know if anybody knows what DOM is. Anyways, there's another way of describing items on the page besides HTML, but it's not really used that often, so we're not really going to be covering it. The only time you might want to cover it is if you actually ever decide to implement your own commands in WebDriver, which I don't think is going to happen for most of you until you're advanced. So if you ever go that direction and you decide to implement your own custom commands in WebDriver, then we can talk about DOM. Day 4, we are going to start kind of slowly getting into scripting. All right, now this course is taught in Python. Python is a weakly typed language, and so is JavaScript. In fact, everything I teach you in JavaScript will be directly translatable to Python. I mean, they're pretty much, okay, maybe they're not 1-to-1, but they're like 98% to 1. Even though we're going to be learning JavaScript and we're going to be learning how to inject JavaScript through Selenium in our code, essentially the next week, everything I told you about JavaScript will also apply to Python. So it's kind of like a twofer. It's 2 birds with 1 stone. I know that sounds sadistic. I'm sorry, animal lovers. Last class, somebody was like, that's mean. I'm sorry. It's an expression. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I'm not trying to teach you JavaScript. It is a good idea to understand a little bit of JavaScript, especially because once you go into the advanced course, or once you go into your job and you start doing your automation job, you'll find there are situations where simple WebDriver, just directly WebDriver, won't handle certain situations, and you actually will need to do these fancy workarounds where you actually do have to use JavaScript injection during your test run to make elements actually accessible and visible. That's what we're going to get to do. We're going to talk about variables, loops, objects. I do not expect you to know what any of those are. However, we do spend only like one or two classes on it. So you should definitely on your own either afterwards follow up and learn it, or even now start kind of maybe learning a little bit about Python so you understand what it is. What the emphasis of this class is to teach you Selenium Webdriver. It's not to teach you Python. You can't learn Python in 10 weeks plus everything else along the way. So yeah, definitely I encourage you on your own to go and do a tutorial. You don't have to become a programmer in Python to be able to do this, but you need to know at least some basic knowledge, right? You need to be able to know how to define a function, what a function is, right? What a variable is, just some very, very basic things. And we.
Do you need to know the cost or other like the?
You don't really need another class. Like I said, you don't need to become a pro, but a little bit of extra practice on the side honestly won't hurt you, all right? So I do encourage it. We will cover all of it in class, but it's going to be like this, a condensed version. So it's probably a lot more helpful for you to have your own leisure and to learn it in a more spread out way. Okay, day 5. Day 5 is when we start installing PyCharm. PyCharm is a Python IDE. So you heard me say IDE before, right? When I said Selenium IDE. So Selenium has its own little tool, right, for creating Selenium scripts. And Python has many, many applications for creating Python scripts. And one of them is PyCharm. Now, the cool thing about PyCharm is that it comes in a free and commercial version. We're going to be using a free version, so it's free. But it's a very, very nice IDE. It does code completion. What does that mean? It means when you type, it tries to guess what you're trying to type, and it fills in the rest for you. Similarly, if you are using a specific object and you don't know what does this object do? Like, how do I use it? You just say dot space, and it gives you all the options, so you can kind of guess and peek and look at the definitions. So it's just a very helpful tool. And I'm going to show you how to convert all of the Selenium test case we created until day 5 into Python and how to run them. And we're going to learn how to use Python, and then also probably do some scripting as well along the way. Day 6 is when we start talking about Python and WebDriver. So officially after day 5, we no longer use Selenium IDE, and I'll come back and talk about that in a second. We will completely switch into using Python and WebDriver. So to answer the previous question, WebDriver is, without using technical words, it's essentially a contract, right? It's a set of rules. That's what it is. It's a set of rules that can be implemented using any language to allow automation of web applications. And that's essentially what a WebDriver is. There's many, many different implementations of WebDriver. So if you decide that you want to automate a web page in Java, there's going to be a Java WebDriver implementation, all right? So a Java client. And then if you decide you want to do it in Python, then there's going to be a Python version, Python implementation of the WebDriver contract. And then if you decide to do it in JavaScript, there's actually like 5 different implementations. So you can actually pick and choose, because JavaScript is a little iffy. I don't know if you guys know that, but there's Node.js, and then there's, I'm totally blanking out right now, Angular, is that correct? Angular. So again, just there's 2, and then Node.js by itself has like 4 or 5. So there's so many implementations. And Ruby has its own, and PHP has its own, and Perl has its own. So everybody has their own implementation of this contract, of this set of rules. And what we're going to be learning is we're going to be learning the Python implementation of the WebDriver. All right, and the very, very exciting part about this set of rules that's called WebDriver is that because it's a set of rules, if you decide to ever switch to a different language, you don't have to relearn WebDriver. I mean, literally the difference between, here, I'll show you, the difference between a Python WebDriver command and a Java WebDriver command is minute. For example, in Python, you might say something like find element, right? And then you will give directions. But in Java, you will say find uppercase element. Right? So Python, Java. Not a huge difference, right? This one is all lowercase with an underscore, and this one has an uppercase letter in the middle and no underscore. That's the difference. They're exactly the same, except for the case. So once you learn this in Python, this package, that's what it's called. It's a Python package, all right? And you decide to go to Java at some point in your career, you don't have to relearn everything. You will just be using a Java package, but the commands are going to be more or less the same. Okay?
Which one is more popular, Java or Python?
It depends on the time. I think it even depends on the time of the year. Like in the winter, more Java. In the summer, more Python. I don't know. It's just lots of JavaScript inquiries lately. So I don't know. I think if you're an architect, like a developer architect, it matters which language you write in. But I think on our level, like a QE test developer level, it's very similar regardless of which language. So just learn one well, right? Just one well. And then if you ever have opportunity to write in a different language, you'll find that within 2-3 weeks you'll be able to switch. It's not like a horrible, horrible thing. Python is easy to learn, yeah. Switching from Python to Java is a lot harder than from Java to Python. Let's just throw that out there as well. So if you're going to learn a language and you have a whole bunch of time, start with Java. If you're going to learn a language and you have minimum amount of time, start with Python, and then Java is kind of a beast you'll tackle later. What were we talking about? Yes, so everybody understands what a WebDriver is? Cool. And of course, this is essentially when I'm gonna be talking more about Python, and I'm gonna be talking about built-in functions in Python and how to loop in Python and how to do all this fancy, not so fancy stuff in Python. Basics. Now, let's again talk about what a package is, because I don't want people to be confused. Python is a lot of packages. Think of Python, actually that's what it's called. It's a library, all right? Python, it's a library. There's a whole bunch of books. WebDriver is one book in a library, all right? Just one. So obviously when you install Python, there's gonna be a whole bunch of other books you might wanna know and you will use, and I don't think anybody knows all of them, in all honesty, and I don't expect you to know all of them. But there are, however, some that are kind of core, like, that all of us have to learn. And those are the ones I'm going to be somewhat covering in the introduction to Python. More Python basics, more Python not so basics. We're going to talk about creating functions, creating modules, creating classes, creating test cases from scratch. On day 8, we're going to talk about test units. So here's another confusing language mixing of terminology that happens in the industry. When you start looking for work, you'll have recruiters and employers asking you, do you have experience building out a framework, right? And at the same time, when I talk about things like test unit, right, also known as PyUnit, by the way, they're the same thing, I'm going to say it's a test framework. So I'm using the same word, framework and framework, but I'm referring to two completely different concepts, all right? And in fact, the way I'm going to be using the word framework when I refer to test unit is more correct than when your recruiters or potential employers will be asking you to using that word, okay? A framework is an incomplete application. What does that mean? It means it's kind of like an Xbox. How many game players we have here? Like, or I don't know, maybe not an Xbox. Basically, it's kind of like a game console, right? And you just have to plug in the last piece to make it work. Does that make sense? It's already a working system, but without that last piece, it just kind of sits there. Doesn't do anything. It's working, but it doesn't do anything. If you want it to work, you plug in that last piece. Does that make sense? You take it out, you plug in another one, oh, it works completely differently now. A whole different picture on the screen, right? A whole different set of steps. But that's what a framework is. And that is what a test unit framework is, all right? Test unit framework is something that already knows how to run your test, how to collect results, how to report on those results, how to generate all kinds of, data for you, where to start, where to end, what to run after what, right? That's what a test framework does. Make sense? And that's what it's a tool that's already somebody developed for us, somebody very, very, very smart and debugged and improved, and we're gonna learn to use it. when recruiters call you and ask you if you know how to build out a test framework, they do not mean that you need to be able to actually be one of the people on the test unit team or JUnit team or I don't know, test NG team. What they're talking about is, do you know how to structure your test cases once you write them? So you automate 100 test cases, right? Do you know how to structure them in the file system? That's what they're talking about. And they're asking you, do you know how to efficiently reuse your code? Like you're looking, you have one test case and other test cases. Oh, 20% of them are the same. Maybe I should take that 20% to create a function, right? That's what they're asking you. So don't get confused. We're going to be learning how to use the test unit framework. We're going to talk a little bit about how to reuse code, but just know that that word is used in two different contexts differently. Okay? Everybody understands both usages?
I didn't understand, but I understood what you're saying. I don't understand what they're saying.
They're saying,
are they asking us if we are going to be the one of the people who actually writes the framework, the code for the framework?
writes the automation code? I wouldn't say for the framework. That's exactly, if they're asking you if you are able and willing to make a decision about into which folder to put your automated test cases and about which functions to create to use in your automated test cases, which is a whole lot easier than creating this kind of test framework. So they're not asking you something huge and scary. They're actually asking you something very simple. Can you make a simple decision about what folder to put your file in? All right, so just so we have it out there. So for most of you, I think, yeah, you'll be good. We also, at this point, I'm going to start torturing you a little bit, and I'm going to have to write stuff from scratch. So up until now, we've used Selenium Ide. We accumulated a whole bunch of test cases. We just export them and edit them, export them and edit them. But at this point, I'm going to actually force you to create a blank file and type everything from scratch. Why? At some point during an interview, somebody might sit you down in front of a blank computer and say, create me a simple test case to log into this application, right? And you need to be able to do it without Selenium Ide. Okay, day 9, WebDriver by itself is actually multiple packages. I lied. I told you it was 1. Okay, it's not really 1. It's 4. So besides WebDriver, there's also WebDriver wait, there's expected conditions, and there's action chains. And so we're basically, oh, and there's also select, I guess. Okay, fine, 4.5. So basically, we're just going to finish talking about all the other little pieces, all right? And this is actually a pretty small piece. This is a larger piece that lets you do all of the advanced things like drag and drop or mouse over something, right? So instead of clicking, you just want to move your mouse there and hang out, not do anything, just kind of hang. All right, managing resources. This is where we start talking about, I hate using the word framework, about the framework in the context of a recruiter. How about I'll say that, all right? So basically, we'll kind of discuss why you would put some functions inside here, why you might want to structure your code in this way, why you might want to structure your code in that way. All right, what are the benefits? What are the not so good things about it? Most of the time, though, you guys, I'm going to be honest with you, there's no pure system. It's a mix of everything. People just go, ah, and it's done, it's alive. All right, yes?
Can you please repeat the first two WebDriver units that we got? The two of them are here. There are two more.
So there's WebDriver wait, there's WebDriver, there's action chains, there's expected conditions, and then there's, I guess, select. I don't count select. It's like, it's a half. I'll count it as a half.
Wait, like time? Like I'm waiting for something?
Yes, yes. Day 10 is all these little odds and ends that we don't get to cover during the other days of the class. It's also a good day where if you accumulated questions or there's something else you really, really want me to stuff into the class, you let me know in advance and I just kind of get it in there. All right, but also we're going to talk about generating sample data. Up until this day, I'm going to make you manually create code to actually create data for yourself. But then on day 10, I'll take pity on you and I'll show you a nice package you can install and it will do all of this awesome stuff for you. Because yeah, I'm sadistic like that. And then I'm going to also talk to you about switching between frames and windows. Most of you understand the concept of switching between windows. Most of you have never heard of frames. We will talk about frames during this class at some point before day 10, but on day 10 we'll actually use an example where I'll show you why you need to do it. And I think everybody understands why they might want to switch between windows, right? So you click a button, a new window opens up. What's next? Well, in WebDriver, you have to explicitly say, WebDriver, I know you're on window A, but now I really want you to look at window B, right? Until you say that explicitly, WebDriver stays on window A. You can open up as many windows as you want. WebDriver says, I'm happy here, I'm good. You're good, I'm good. Checking element location and size. So there are situations where you will have something like this come to you. So you're at work, and a person says to you, and a person comes to you and says, we need you to write a test case that checks that this banner is on the top left side of the window, top left of the window. And it comes to, it's one of those situations where like, well, what is top and what is left, and how do you determine it, and then how do you check that the actual element is there? Because what you will learn throughout this course is when WebDriver or Selenium Ide looks for an element, it doesn't look by coordinates. It looks by relationships, right? So or by properties. So basically, what am I saying? I'm saying it looks for, so it needs to be inside a second cell of the third row of the, I don't know, fourth table on the page. That's how it looks. It doesn't look like, oh, it has to be, 60 pixels down and 300 pixels across. But what if you actually need to check that something is 300 down and 60 across, right? What do you do? And that's what I mean by this. Location and size. Or how do you check that something is exactly 420 pixels, right? How do you do that, right? So that's what we talk about on day 10. And then some other odds and ends. We'll have a course summary. We'll have Q&A. So gather your questions for day 10. This is a point where you can ask me any kind of interview questions. There is a disclaimer though. I'll give you the answer I would give during the interview. I do not guarantee that it's 100% correct because I can only make my best guess. All right, any questions? Are we good? Everyone's groovy? Yeah.
Can you use Eclipse instead of Python?
So that's a very good question. Technically, there is a Python-enabled version of Eclipse. And you can totally use it. I can't control you. The problem is I won't be able to help you. If you need something set up or configured or done and it doesn't work or you don't know how to do it, you're kind of in the world of your own.
Because Eclipse is completely open source, but PyCharm is partially open.
Like I said, you can use Sublime, you can use Notepad. I'm completely like, you're free. You can use, unless, like I said, if you know how to use it well, more power to you. I know a lot of the developers I work with, they use like Sublime. Sublime is basically just a fancy notepad. That's cool for them. I endorse it. Great success. But my tool of choice is PyCharm, just because I know how to use it well. And so if any of you run into problems, I'll be able to help you. Other IDEs, not as much. Eclipse in Java I can help you with, but Eclipse PyCharm flavor, Python flavor, I'm not as skilled to help you. That's what I would worry about.
So advanced Selenium, so if you want to do any advanced features in Python, using Python. So
Okay,
will I be able to
see, that's a misconception. Just because you're using a free version of PyCharm doesn't mean that you're missing some kind of features that you need for hardcore development. It just basically means that there's some shortcuts that are not enabled or some plugins that are not enabled. You can still totally do your job. I actually work with PyCharm free version at my job. I have been doing it for the past years. I'm not going to count. So, and I've never had to use a paid version, even though my company will pay for it if I need it, but I don't need it. So totally you can use it. More power to you, but I just won't be able to help. All right, what is test automation? And try not to give me a textbook version of the answer. Give me like, I'm talking to my 3-year-old answer. What is test automation?
You want to get some
It's what lazy people do, right?
Check the all test cases.
It's a what?
Created test cases, and now we want computer to check it.
check it. Okay.
The scope of test cases to check, and we don't.
Okay, so that's part of the answer. Absolutely.
Same thing you want to do again and again, repetition.
Okay, that's part of the answer. What else?
Not doing that manually, so recursively if you are doing something.
Okay. So basically, if we were talking to a 3-year-old, it's two things, right? It's the computer checking something for me, and also the computer doing it over and over for me, right? So there's two things happening. That's exactly what this is. It's a process of writing a computer program to do testing that would otherwise need to be done by you. And it's also a process of executing those tests based on certain conditions. All right, so in advanced class, we're actually going to talk about CI. CI stands for continuous integration, and it's basically an umbrella that's used to describe tools like Bamboo, Jenkins, Circle CI. I'm blanking out. There's at least like 6 other ones out there. But so there are systems out there that will run your tests for you without you having to say go, right, and clicking that button. And that's part of automation. All right, that is part of automation. But we're going to be covering this part. All right. So there are 2 types of test automation: code-driven testing and graphical user interface testing. Which one do you think our stuff falls under? So let's do this. If you think it's the first one, raise your hand. Come on, come on. If you think it's the second one, raise your hand. If you haven't raised your hand, raise your hand. Oh, honest people, good job. All right, it's actually both. Some people already know this because they've heard me say this before. It's both because we're going to be using test unit. Test unit is actually a unit testing framework. It's designed for code testing, all right? Not for user interface testing. And then we're going to be using Webdriver, which is designed for user interface testing. What we're doing is we're doing this, right? We're combining both. Not only that, we're also going to, well, not in this class, but in advanced class, we're going to talk about things like data-driven testing, where you basically write a piece of code and you supply data into it, all right? So you throw different data into it, and different test cases are magically created based on the data you threw in. And I can give you an example of that. You can pretty much all think of an example like that. Let's do login, right? So what is login? Enter, enter, click. Enter, enter, click, right? So type, type, click, type, type, click. And how many login test cases can you think of? More than 5, right? More than 10 maybe, right? So more than a certain number. There's many of them. But it's always the same thing. Type, type, click. Check your result. Type, type, click. Check your result, right? So you can write one little piece of code and just supply data in and reuse the code instead of having to copy paste 10 times. So yeah, it's both. But most people consider Webdriver to fall under user interface testing, just an FYI. Okay, advantages of automation. People already screamed out some of them. One of them was that you can do it repetitively over and over and over without going crazy. That's a good advantage. What are some other advantages? What are advantages of automation? Why do it?
We might miss certain things at the computer.
Save time, so it's fast. What else?
Save money.
Why? How does it save money?
Pay for people working.
Well, that's true, but developers cost more.
But I still think it is save money because you automate this. You cannot have
Over time, it does save you money, but also you save money because there's less bugs, so you lose less customers, right? You don't miss things. So there's this thing called human efficiency. Humans over time learn how to be more efficient by taking shortcuts and cutting corners. And unfortunately, sometimes that's not a good thing, all right? And in code, that's not a good thing. For example, I don't notice this about myself. If I already know a URL of something, I'm not going to go through 6 different menus to get there. I'm just going to type it in and be like, bam, I'm there, right? There you go, fight. But a computer, it doesn't take that shortcut. It will still go menu, 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 right? So it's one of those examples. So let's look at what else we have here. So we have reliable, repeatable, reusable, better quality software, speed, and we have cost reduction. I'm not going to dwell on most of these. Most of you can understand what all of those say. So anyways, what is Selenium? Well, the first thing you should realize is that Selenium is not one tool, it's a set of tools. The first one we're going to get acquainted with is called Selenium Ide. However, it's a learning tool. It's not your means to an end. I don't expect you to go to a job and only use Selenium Ide and succeed. It's a crutch. It's a crutch that will help us learn to walk. Ultimately, though, Webdriver is where you want to go. All right? Webdriver is the library, again, that you will end up using depending on which language you end up writing in. Right? And even if you don't end up writing in Python, and I'm completely okay with you not writing in Python, even if you decide to do Ruby or Perl or Java or PHP or anything else, right? Webdriver is what you're going to be using. All right, make sense? Selenium Ide is just so we can learn how to use locators, so we can start understanding how automation works in general. So sometimes you need to wait for things. Sometimes you need to, check things. Sometimes you need to do things, right? That's essentially what we're doing Selenium Ide for. There's also other pieces of Selenium, other pieces that are, WebDriver, right? So Selenium Ide, WebDriver. There's also a piece called Remote Server, and there's also a piece called Selenium Grid, all right? Now, Remote Server has two uses. Remote Server is used when you want to be able to kick off tests from your machine, but actually run them somewhere else. Can you think of two examples of why you might want to do that? Kick off tests from here, but have them run over there?
Because the data is there. The database.
Close-ish, but you can still access the database from somewhere else. So why? So one example I think all of you can totally relate with. I'm on the Windows, but I need to check my code on Safari browser. Can I run Safari browser on my machine? No. So I need to somehow be able to run it on a machine that has a Safari browser. But my tests are here, right? So I can either go physically install all of my code on another machine and go and click the button there, or I can just basically say, okay, remote server up, run the test on that machine. 2 steps, I'm done, right? That's cool. That's number one. Number 2 reason is actually not as apparent, and it actually ties into Selenium Grid. Selenium Grid is when you want to run multiple tests at the same time. So if you have a lot of tests, like 1,000, and each one of them takes 2 minutes, which is not bad, you can see how that can take a really long time to execute, right? And honestly, nobody is that patient. Nobody's going to be waiting for 2 minutes times 1,000, whatever how many hours that works out to be. So at some point, we start splitting them and running them concurrently, and that's what Selenium Grid lets you do. But how does it let you do it? There is a hub, and it actually communicates to multiple remote servers. And each one of those remote servers runs on a different machine and communicates back the results. So it's basically a way to multiplex. Does that make sense? There's actually a third reason to have remote server, and that is, who's heard of Appium? Appium. Some people are into mobile. So it's basically a tool for mobile automation. And Appium is actually built on top of Selenium or WebDriver remote server. It literally boots up remote server, but it converts, instead of converting the commands you send into JavaScript, it converts them into, whatever, Android Java language or iOS C# language. So that's its own thing. But it's still built on remote server. So I think all of that is pretty self-explanatory, and I've already listed all those languages multiple times, so I won't do it again. Now, it is cross-browser. Selenium is cross-browser, but out of the box, it only runs on Firefox. All right? If you want to run it on Google Chrome, there's an extra little bit you need to have. All right? You can still use it, but you need to download an extra little executable, and you actually need to point to it in order to run on Google Chrome. Similarly with Opera, you need to download an extra little executable. Safari is actually unique because you still need to download an executable, but you execute it and it attaches to your Safari, and after that you never have to do it again. Like, you don't have to have it on your computer anymore. It actually modifies your Safari browser. Versus these all other executables, they just kind of hang out on your system forever. And if you ever remove them, things are broken. But if you put it back, it's fixed again. So It's a fun, sorry, I have like a cord here. So Selenium at this point is pretty old. It was actually invented in 2004. It didn't really become mainstream until 2006. It was originally called JavaScript Functional Tester, and it was originally done 100% in JavaScript HTML. Right now, however, most of the actual Selenium core is done in Java. So the actual core is all Java. It was originally designed to make test writing easy, and it's open source, which basically means it is free. Okay, you ready for the trivia? Okay, go back to your chemistry days. Find Selenium. Go, 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 go. Did you find it? Did you find it? Did you find it? So Selenium is actually number 34. And who knows what Selenium is used for?
It's for treating mercury placement.
Exactly. Somebody's looking at my PowerPoint. Good job. And there's a joke behind that. I think some of you are too young to know this, but there used to be this company called Mercury, and it owned all of these really expensive softwares, such as WinRunner and Qtp and LoadRunner and what else am I missing? Test Director. And they were very, very expensive, but they were also very difficult to use. They were just a pain in the butt to use. So this little company came out and decided to create Selenium, which is supposed to solve this poisoning by mercury. So the irony is that now both Mercury products and Selenium are owned by the same company, which is HP. HP bought it all up. And I don't think Test Director exists anymore. Is Test Director dead? Who knows? Is it dead? I know Qtp and LoadRunner are still alive, but is Test Director dead? No. Yeah, so it's dead, right? Yeah, I think it's dead now. And I think WinRunner is dead as well. Okay, so basically these are the tools. I already listed them out. There's Selenium Ide. Selenium Ide lets you export into Webdriver, and after that you have a choice. You can either run Webdriver through a remote server. You can run it directly. You can run it through remote server, or you can run it through the hub on multiple remote servers. Right? Make sense? Which is what I explained like 2 slides back. All of this is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to figure it out as soon as you install it. There's a record button, there's a play button, there's a way to edit your code. It supports multiple ways of locating elements on the page. It does have autocomplete, very basic autocomplete, and it lets you create test cases and test suites. However, I do recommend creating test suites using Python rather than using Selenium IDE. We will now install Selenium IDE. And even if you have Selenium Ide installed, you can install it again and just get a newer version, and it's fine. How do you install it? You will Google Selenium, and the really first link that you're going to get is going to be the Selenium website. All right, so you're going to Google Selenium, but if you really want to be one of those shortcut takers, there's this download link. All right. So you can go here and then click on the downloads inside, or you can be like, yeah, directly to downloads. So this is what we want. We want to go directly to downloads. Yep, you just click on it. Even if you have it installed already, it's not going to hurt you to do it again. It doesn't conflict. Dun, dun, dun. You should have a new button that looks like a little square with a pencil. So you guys, sometimes this button doesn't come up. If this button doesn't come up, you can click on the hamburger menu and you can say customize. And you'll be able to pull it from here into your menu. Like you have to actually pull it over here then. So what do I mean by pull? Here. So let's pretend this button is not there. See how it's not there? I would have to actually pull it over. Okay? But it's pretty rare. Usually it pops up pretty easily. For most of you, when you pop open your Selenium Ide, it should look like this. Okay. So first things first, once you're on this website, once you're here, you're going to click on your Selenium Ide button. And for most of you, this is important, okay? For most of you, when you turn on your Selenium Ide, you will already be recording, right? Now, it's pretty hard to see, especially on a Mac, if you are already recording. There's a little rule. If you look really closely at your record button and there's a square around it, you're recording. If there is no square around it, you're not recording, all right? Because sometimes the color is not very visible. Like sometimes you're like, it's red and red. Doesn't matter. But if there's a square around it, you're recording. If there's no square, you're not recording. So be very careful. Once you open your Selenium Ide, for most of you, you will be recording immediately. And that means everything you click on your web page will be picked up by your recorder. All right? So here we go. I started my Selenium Ide. It is recording. I am going to go to my application under test. I'm going to log in. So the credentials are on the board. As I log in, every action I perform will be picked up by my Selenium Ide. All right? So I'm going to click the login button. Again, just to show you, it logs in. I also will call your attention to the fact that you see how long it takes to log in? And Selenium Ide is smart enough to realize this, so it actually said click and wait. All right? Now we're going to talk a lot more about click and wait command, but I do want you to kind of pay attention to it now and why it's being used. In situations where it takes a while to do something, you need to be able to wait. And sometimes it's not just because you're logging in. Sometimes it's because something just takes a long time to load onto the page, right? It's just like a large image or a table with a lot of data. Does that make sense? You will need to wait. There's different types of wait. The most common one, however, is going to be click and wait. All right, so I logged in, right? I logged in. Now, once I log in, what we're doing is we're creating the most basic test case, basically the hello world, the number one of all of the test cases. Basic login. Now, when we're doing valid login test case, what is the expected result? So let's pretend you're doing it manually. You created your test case. Step 1, enter username. Step 2, enter password. Step 3, click login button. What's the expected result? How do you know that you logged in? Okay, so there are two things you can do. You can check that something is on the page, like some image or some page title or something like that. But in our case, the page title hasn't changed. Before you were logged out, it said open Orange HRM. You logged in, it's still Orange HRM, right? So for us, we can check that the welcome admin is displayed, right? So basically, you logged in and it says welcome, right? So to do this, we're going to right-click on welcome admin, and we're going to choose assert text. Now, you see how I have all these options over here, right? Most of you will not. Most of you are using your tool for the first time, and these are what's called recently used or most actively used commands. So most of you will not have them. Most of you will actually have to go all the way to the bottom. See how there's a thing on the bottom with an arrow? And then you will be able to choose them from here. That makes sense? So if you go over here and you don't see the command, don't panic. Go all the way to the bottom. Look for it here. Now, which command are we looking for again? Assert text, right? Assert text. Now, that's number 1. Everybody understood? If you don't find it here, go to the bottom. Number 2. You might have something different over here in the middle. This little part is called the locator. And depending on how your Selenium Ide is configured, it might not choose ID. It might choose CSS or XPath or name or any of the other ways that it supports to locate an element. So if yours says assert text and then some gibberish goes inside here, but then at the very end it says welcome admin, you're good. Still choose it. all right? Still the one you want. It's just this middle part that might confuse you. Does that make sense? It might have some different combination of letters in there that might not be as pretty as ID equals welcome. And that's okay. Everybody got it? So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say, all right, assert text is what I want. And then afterwards, all I'm going to do is I'm going to log out. So to log out, there's this little arrow on top. I'm going to click it and then log out. All right? Now, what should I do after I'm done with my test case? Stop recording. Yes. Because I'm going to be tempted to go and play around with things, and I don't want it to be continue recording things. All right? So I'm going to stop recording. And yes, go ahead and save it. Just don't close it. All right? Because there's still some stuff we want to be able to do to it before we close it. All right?
How did you save it?
I haven't saved it yet. I just stopped recording. It's not saved. It's still called Untitled, as you can see on top. I haven't done anything to it. So I just stopped recording by clicking on the button again. Okay?
I have a question. So
Yeah.
right now we are doing HRM whatever, but if we were doing some other random website, would it still record that?
Yeah, it will record whatever page you're interacting with. That's why you have to be very careful. In fact, if I switch from this tab to another tab, it will continue following me along and recording all the gibberish. So just, yeah. If you're recording, concentrate, stop recording, do something else. Yeah.
And then I have, maybe it's not even relevant now, I don't know, but earlier you were talking about the window that it likes to be in one window. In order to go to the other window, we have to kind of select it. So then how
So it records everything as if it's the same window. If you actually wanted to change to another window, you have to tell it to do it explicitly. As you record, it will presume that all of it is happening as one window. So when you play it back, it's going to be like, I don't see all these things because, well, they're not there. They're somewhere else. So you guys, I was going to do it twice. Okay, so one more time. Once you log in, that part is easy, right? You will point your mouse here and you will right click. Right click. And then on the bottom, you will choose Assert text. All right? I'm going to leave this up so it's a reminder. Once you do this, this is the most difficult part. You just log out. So in terms of clicking the login button or pressing enter, it does record two different things. But in terms of navigating from here to here, it shouldn't matter. Like if you just click here and type, or if you tab to the next thing, it just records which item you interacted with. How you got from one item to another doesn't matter.
So then as far as this, it doesn't matter how to do this a certain way. So
No, this is correct. It looks perfectly good to me. However, there is a way to enter username and password and not click login. You know how you can just say enter and you will log in? In that case, it actually records submit because this is a form, and there's a way to submit a form without clicking the login button. So that's the only other way you could possibly record this. So now that you have your test case, the next thing to do is to actually play it back to make sure it works. I'm going to play mine first just to show you that it works, and then all of you can try, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least you'll know how it fails, all right? If it fails, and you can also compare your code to mine, there's only 7 lines, and see that you did it correctly, okay? So I'm going to play back mine. Here's my code. Now, there are 2 buttons. You guys see how there's 2 buttons on top? One of them has 1 rectangle, one of them has 3 rectangle. Now, there's also this panel over here on the left. I closed mine because it annoys me, but most of you have it open. This is the test suite tab. It's possible to open multiple test cases and have all of them open in Selenium Ide. And if for whatever reason you decided you wanted to play all of them one after the other sequentially, then you would use the button on the left with multiple rectangles, and it will go through all of them. But if you only want to play the test case that you're currently looking at, you press the one on the right. If you only have one open, does it matter which one you click? No. But you want to get into a habit of clicking the correct one, because I guarantee to you the next time you're going to have multiple open, you'll click the wrong button, you're going to be like, nope. So yeah, just click on the right one. The right one is the one on the right. Get it? The right one is the right one. So you're just going to click on it, and then you get to kind of chillax for a second, because it takes a while to load. There's also a way to cheat. Okay, I'm gonna cheat you guys. I'm sorry. I cheated. That's why it says red on top. All right, so the projector does not show colors. So for me on my laptop, it's actually green. All right, but here it's all still white. You can't see the colors. But when you play it on your computer, you'll be able to see that it's either green or red. And if it's red, that's not a good thing. And if it's a green, it's great success, right? So just kind of look at the colors. Go ahead and try it right now. Go ahead and play your test case. Again, the first step kind of takes forever. Just be patient. And if it fails, don't worry too much about it. I'm guaranteeing to you that if your code looks like mine, you're good to go. All right? So go ahead and try to play just so you know how to do it. While you're doing that, I'm going to continue talking. All right? Let's talk about what an assert command is. All right? So all of the other commands, I think, on this page make sense to everybody, right? So what does open do? Opens a URL. What does type do? Enter some keys in, right? Then we also have click. And we have click and wait. Now, that's actually a funny one, right? Why do we have click and wait here but just click here? Why not click and wait everywhere? Or why not click everywhere? Why? Why in certain situations do we have click and wait, and in certain situations it's fine? Yeses?
You have to wait for a server response.
Okay, that's a yes, very good answer actually. All right, so can I always use click and wait? Why not? Waiting is good, right? So what you should be thinking is, well, what am I waiting for? It's waiting for something. What if that something never happens? Then can I say click and wait? What will happen if I say click and wait for the sun to come up? Well, that's a bad example. Sun will come up eventually. Click and wait for my bank account to become $1 million. All right?
It's gonna come eventually.
You're an optimist, aren't you? He's like, it will get there eventually. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's good. Makes my heart feel warm. The point is that if the event doesn't happen within 30 seconds, your test case fails, right? So you should only wait for things that actually will happen. If they won't happen, or will only happen in 100 years, you probably shouldn't wait for them, all right? And that's the difference between click and waiting and just clicking. Now, again, back to the question, what are we waiting for? Well, it turns out that and wait, whenever you see and wait, and it's not just click and wait, there's also type and wait and select and wait and all these other flavors of and wait. Turns out and wait stands for and wait for page to load. So whenever you see and wait, think for page to load. That means that if you are clicking something that does not cause the page to reload, you shouldn't use and wait. You should just click. Now, the next question you should be asking yourself is, what if I click something and it doesn't cause the page to reload, but it causes something to change, right? For example, I click on a button and a new picture loads onto the page. Now, the page doesn't reload, the page is still there, but an item on the page changes, right? Well, in that case, you click, and as a separate command, you wait for something. Does that make sense? So for example, wait for element to become visible, or wait for element to become present, or wait for something to become selected, or wait for something to become enabled. So basically you click, but you specify a wait that is different than wait for page to load. Make sense? Right? In this case, though, we didn't have to wait for anything. We're just clicking. It opens up another set of menus, and we just select the next menu. And that next menu causes the page to reload. So that's why you have click and then click and wait. Make sense? Okay. So that's one thing. Yeah. Yes.
Like this, the orange HRM, I had that in one tab, and then I was typing my the notes in the other Gmail. So it's
As you switch over, it's going to.
it's putting both of them
Yes.
together, and I tried just doing this again, but it does that again. So
No. So yeah, you can't do two things. You work on one tab, you stop recording, and then you can
What
continue.
I did, but it's
Really?
I logged out. I stopped recording.
Did you clear up before you started recording again? Because it doesn't over-record. You probably still have your results from previous run. So you need to delete everything and start again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there any way to write down these commands in
Yes, you can add.
without recording?
Yes, you can totally change them, and we're going to do that right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Does, when I see a command click, but is there an option to know which right click or left click is the?
There is a different command called context click to do a right click. So, but it doesn't actually record it. You would have to manually add it in. So there's a whole bunch of non-basic, I don't want to say advanced, non-basic commands, but you have to manually add them in. Yes?
If your lockout is trailing, is that it could just say like slowness as the
Probably. Probably. If your script looks like mine, I wouldn't freak out about it until you get home. So you guys, most of your scripts will work like this at home. All right? In this classroom, it's a little bit wavy. Okay, let's come back to assert. All right, so all of these commands made sense. We talked about all of them. All of them are like self-explanatory. But what is this assert business? All right. Well, assert is a way of saying check. All right, that's what it stands for. Anytime you see the word assert, you're essentially saying check. And in this case, you're saying check text. All right. So we're checking the text of what? What are we checking the text of?
Welcome.
The welcome message, right? And what do we expect it to be? Welcome admin. So essentially, check text in the welcome message. We expected result is welcome admin. And actual result, well, that's something it retrieves during the test run, right? And compares. So if they don't match, you'll get an error that says expected this, actual text didn't match, right? And if they do match, you just get a green line and everybody's happy and nobody says anything, right? Everything is fine. Okay, so does everybody understand assert? Now, when you're recording your test case, if you were very attentive, you might have noticed that there's also verify text command, all right? And some of you are going to be kind of tempted to click on that, verify text. So I'm going to explain to you what the difference is and why we don't use it. The difference is that verify, if it fails, does not abort the test. It basically waits to scream bloody murder until the test has finished, right? And sometimes that totally makes sense to do something like this. However, when we switch to using Python, there is no verify command. There's only assert, right? Unit test frameworks do not have equivalent of verify. Even though Selenium Ide has it, your unit test framework, doesn't matter which language you choose. If you go into Ruby or Java or PHP, there's no verify. There's only assert. So I'm getting you right now into the habit of using assert. Verify is actually an artificially created mechanism where what happens, it's still assert, but it gets caught into this little container that doesn't get released until the end of the test case. So essentially all the asserts get caught, and then finally when the test case finishes, it says, do I have anything in my container? Oh my goodness, there's all these horrible things in here. Now let me print them on the screen. All right? Why would you want to do this? Well, sometimes you're checking that a page has all these items on it, right? And you don't want to stop the test just because one item is missing. For example, I want my page to have 5 different images and 6 different buttons, right? If the very first image I was expecting to find in the page is missing, I don't want to stop testing. I want to make sure that other ones are there as well. And if something else is missing, I want to get it all as part of my end of the test report. Does that make sense? Yes? I'll give you a life situation. All right. So this is a situation I always use. All right. You're going to the store. You need to get milk, eggs, and bread, right? All your basics. You walk to the store. You get to the refrigerator section. No milk. Here you have 2 options. You can be like, life sucks, and run out of the store. Or you can be like, okay, that's not good, but let me go check if they have eggs, right? And you go in there, oh, they have eggs. All right, that's good, not so bad. That sucked, but this is so fine. And you go and you look at there's no bread, and you're like, right? And that's the end of your test case. So at the end of your test case, you can print a report. No milk, no bread, but eggs were fine, right? This is a situation of verify. You verified the 2 out of 3 were there. You did not throw in a towel and say, hell, everything sucks, right? You didn't. You went through your entire test case. And at the end, you threw a hissy fit, right? Sometimes that makes sense. However, in other situations, for example, and this way I'll use a software. The life situations are fun, but I'll use a software situation. For example, I need to be on a certain page to navigate to another page, right? So I get to this page, and there has to be a button there. So I assert that a button is on the page, and it's not. But I need to click that button in order to go to the next page to continue with my test case. Should I continue with my test case if the button is there, or should I abort? I should abort. Because if I continue with my test case, I'm going to get another failure and another failure and another failure and another failure because I'm on the wrong page. I never went to that other page. And now I just have convoluted results that are telling me I don't have this and I don't have this and I don't have this. And in fact, I never went to the correct page. So of course I don't have all that stuff on this one, right? Make sense? So different situations call for different measures. But in a test framework, there is no such thing as verify, right? So where you get to like say, oh, I'm sorry, no eggs. Like, okay, let's go and see if there's something else. That kind of situation you have to create artificially using code. All right, and we're going to learn how to do that. It's called try except. Later on, when I use that kind of phrase again, you'll know what I'm talking about. All right. Whew. Everybody got that? All right. Okay, 8:35. I have 10 more minutes of going. What else am I forgetting? Yes. Okay. Important stuff. Yes, important stuff. So first things first. Sometimes you get to your test. Let me scroll this up. Okay. You get to your test case and you look at one of your lines of code, and instead of something pretty like this where it says ID equals welcome, you'll see something like this. All right, no, let's pick something that's uglier. Nothing really ugly this time around. You guys are kind of lucky, but you see something long and horrible looking. Like there's like / and div and / and tr and / and more A's and then numbers and letters and weird things, all right? What this means is that it found some locator that wasn't pretty. It's an XPath, right? And it means that your system might not be configured to choose IDs as a priority over XPath, or to choose CSS as a priority over XPath. So there's a priority you can assign. And as you can see, that's not a big deal. The locator it chose for you is not the only one you get to use, all right? You're not stuck with it. You don't have to re-record. If you have not closed your test case yet, right? So you recorded it and you haven't closed it, so you have it up. You can go to any one of these lines, select it, just like I did. And over here on the bottom, you see there's a little triangle, right? Next to the gibberish. You can choose other selectors. So go ahead and try that right now. Select any line. Don't worry, you're not going to mess it up. You can always put it back. And then on the bottom, so over here you won't be able to edit it. On the bottom, you're going to select the little triangle and just kind of look at all the other locators you have available. So not only do you have ID, which is I think most of us have, but you also have link text. This is called by link text, right? So welcome admin is actually a link, and that's why you can do by link text. You also have CSS, and you saw that in the PowerPoint. I know you don't know what it means yet, but next week you will. So CSS. You have all these different XPaths. So everything that starts with a / is called an XPath, but they're all different. Like this one is XPath link, and this one is XPath attribute, and this one's XPath ID relative. So it has all these little names for these XPath on the right side. All right? Now, do you need to learn all of these different ones? No. I just want you to be aware that no matter what you see when you record, you can always change it and mold it and modify it. All right? And if this is not good enough, you can actually change it yourself manually. So let's say that I like this locator, right? But I decided I want to add something else to it. Now, I can't think of right now anything to add, but let's say I wanted to add something else. I can type stuff into it, right? Now, that will break it, so don't do it. But I'm just showing you that if you ever in a situation where none of the locators it shows are nice, you can create your own. That's what we're going to learn next week. We're going to learn how to create our own locators so that all of these are not mystery. So you can actually understand what each one of them is and why one is better tthan the other in certain situations. Yes?
What is an XPath actually?
So it's kind of, do you know what file path is? File path. So if I tell you file path blah, 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 right? You know exactly what to do with it. You're going to go to a folder. Well, XPath is just HTML path. So it's a way to traverse from HTML down to the correct location.
One follow-up question is, whatever I choose here, it doesn't have any impact on what the user might see when they
No. This is, okay. So a locator is just like giving directions, all right? Like if I'm talking to a guy, I might, and I'm giving him directions, I might say, all right, the sporting goods, I'm sorry, I'm totally stereotyping you, man. I'm so sorry, but for the sake of the argument, turn at the sports goods store, go right, see the big tractor, I don't know, drive straight until you see, a picture of a supermodel, whatever, right? Stereotyping the hell out of you, sorry. When I'm giving you directions to a woman, I might do something completely different, right? I might be like, the department store, turn left at Macy's, then drive around the pink, umbrella, yogurt place, then, there's going to be a kids park on the right, whatever ladies are interested in. So does that make sense? Both directions will get you to the correct place, but they're just a little bit different.
But it's only for the tester per se, not for...
Yeah, it's exactly. It's just in different situations, different locators are going to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Resilient against being broken. Okay, does that make sense? So everybody understands where the locators can change, right? Now, what if I forgot a command, right? What if I forgot a command? I want to add a command. So over here on the bottom, after I logged out, or maybe over here on the top, I don't know, whichever, pick one. I want to check the title of the page, right? Now, it doesn't matter where you insert this command because the title is going to be the same everywhere. So don't worry about it. If I want to insert the title of the page, all I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click. I'm going to say Insert New Command. There's also Insert New Comment, by the way, if you want to add a comment. New command. And then you can just insert it. So in this case, I want to check title. So what am I going to type in? Right, good. Assert title. And you see how I'm typing it auto-completes, right? So as soon as you see the correct option, you can just click on it. All right, so assert title. And what do I put as a locator? Do I have to provide a locator for a page title? What do you think?
Yeah.
No, so a page title is always in the same location. So when you say assert title, it already knows where to find it. It doesn't need you to tell it to go to HTML/title. It already understands that title is title. So when you say assert title, all you have to do is just provide expected result. So what is the expected result for our page title? Yeah, it's, sorry, you can't see my tab. Right here, orange HRM. So it's always one next to another. So if you're not using, you know what I mean? You don't just skip a field. They just get moved up. I don't really know how to explain it any other way. Basically, if number 2 is not filled in by something, put it in number 2. If number 2 is filled in by something, put it in number 3. But, over here on the bottom, again, if it's closed for you, I'm sorry, but you can open it. There's a little tabby thing on the bottom. If you open it up, it actually gives you a nice overview of what this command does. And it also tells you how many parameters it takes. All right? So if you, it can only take 2. It can take 0, 1, or 2. Right? So if you have parentheses with nothing inside, you don't have to do anything. If you have only 1, you put it in the second. And if it has 2, you put it in the second and third. Right? Whatever it says. So on that note, let's pick something that uses 2. For example, assert text, right? This one says you have to provide a locator and a pattern. So that basically means command, locator, pattern, right?
So in case there is some values not there, it just moves up in the hierarchy.
Right, right. It just moves like. Yeah. You guys, just to let you know, I know this looks like it's like some kind of fancy thing, but it's actually just HTML. All right, that's what you're writing right now. It's just HTML. See? It's just being displayed all pretty for you. That's why it moves up, because you don't want to leave like a cell open. It just messes up your HTML. I'm sorry. You thought it was fancy. It's not. I burst your bubble. Okay, so let's review. If I don't know what a certain command does, and I want to find out how to use it, where do I look? The reference tab on the bottom, right? If I want to manually edit my path, my locator, how do I do it? I select the line. First, you have to select it, right? That's the part you have to remember. Select it first. And then you can just, right. If I want to add a command, what do I do? Right click, insert command, manually in. Now, one more thing. Let's say that, and I already added title on the bottom, on the top here. What if I also want to add it on the bottom? You don't have to do it. I'm just showing you, right? You can also do it this way, right? So you see how I'm not recording right now? My button is off. But asserts are special. So when I'm asserting something, even if I'm not recording, I can still select the line where I want to insert it. So right now I'm going to insert it over here, right above this line. And I can right click on the page and still insert my command. See, assert text. And then when I come back over here, it inserted it right above what I had selected.
Sorry, where did you get the assert text?
So the same thing I did before, I just right clicked, right? So you don't have to right click on a specific item. If you right click on the white space, it will just give you all the commands that pertain to that white space. Assert title is kind of anywhere, right? Because title belongs to the whole page, so it comes up wherever you click. And finally, oops, I inserted my assert title in the wrong location. What should I do, right? Well, all I have to do, where is it? Now I can't see it. I'm blind. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I did assert text instead of assert title. Hold on. One more time. Assert title. There we go. Okay. Oops, I inserted in the wrong location. Horribleness, horribleness. Okay, no, it's not. You can drag and drop it wherever you want. So here I am just holding it, and I'm going to drag it. You see how there's a line that appears on the left? Well, wherever that line is, that's where it's going to get dropped. So if I want to drop it over here, then I just let go. Cool? So if for whatever reason you were like, wrong location, I have to delete and re-record. No, just drag it. Drag it up and down. Cool?
What if you you made a line and then you changed your mind, you didn't want to put it again?
Delete it, or move it, or change it manually, or however you want to do it. Yes?
So you can't make any of these changes once you've saved it or closed it?
Good question. So the reason I keep emphasizing before you close it, only for the locators. You see how you see this locator over here, and it's only one? But it's when this drop down, you can select from a drop down, it only remembers those other options immediately after you record. All right? If you close and you reopen, it forgets all those other locators. It only remembers the ones you saved. However, any other change, you are totally free to make manually yourself. It's just the option for the locator will be forgotten. All right?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So
in case now we are doing it without recording, so if I don't save it, and then it won't, that locator won't be there anymore, right?
Well, Assert title doesn't actually have a locator. It's not that you save. You can save right now. It's not going to lose all the
Even
options.
without,
It's only when you close that it cleans the memory and all the other locators that are not visible over here in the table will get forgotten. All right? That's the only kind of thing you have to remember. So if you're going to be using the other optional locators, you have to do it immediately after recording. If you close and you reopen, your only other option is manually figuring it out what the other locator is going to be. All right? Cool? Okay. There's actually 3 test case practices that we have in the PowerPoint, but we're going to start with number 2 just because I don't know if we have enough time. So we're going to do number 2, then number 3, and then you guys can either do number 1 at home, or we can skip it, or if we have time, we'll do it. But in any case, we're going to start with number 2. So there's a PowerPoint called practice test cases or something, and we're starting with number 2, which is called nickname. We're going to do exactly the same thing as last time. I'm going to talk about the steps. I'm going to show you the steps. And then after that, you guys get to record it, debug it on your own. Now, what is debugging? Debugging is when you play it back and you figure out what's wrong. All right? By this point, all of you should understand the concept of click versus click and wait. Right? However, there's going to be also some other things you need to do for this specific test case. Now, you guys remember right-click and all the commands that came up? Those commands are only a tiny, tiny, tiny portion of all of the available Selenium Ide commands. All right? Just to kind of demonstrate the difference, I'm going to switch over to Selenium Ide right now. So here we go. All of the commands available in Selenium Ide are here. You see how I keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, right? That's a lot. The ones I have available when I right-click is just this. All right? It's a very tiny little list. So a lot of times, there will be a command that you want to use that is not available by right-clicking. It's just not one of those commands. However, you can manually add it later, right? Because you guys know how to insert a command. Now, let's kind of try to review the logic. What is the most parameters a command takes in Selenium Ide? 2. So if you know that later on you will have to insert a command, right? And it's not available through the context menu, you can choose some other command that has 2 parameters. And then later on, all you have to do is just replace the name of that 2-parameter command to the one you wanted. And you will already have the 2 parameters recorded for you. So you'll have the locator and the expected result, right? Just the command name will be different. And you can manually change that. If you later on find out that the command you wanted to insert only takes 1 parameter and you recorded 2, not a big deal. You recorded more than you need. You can just delete the stuff that you don't need and change it. You know what I mean? So basically protect yourself. If there's a command you need to use later on and it's not available through the context menu, choose the next best thing, and then later on you can go and manually change the name of the command. Everybody got that? Yes? Okay.
But my changing it is not going to affect anybody else. Like when they if I change something to fit my
So your recorded code is completely your own. It has no way to interact with HTML. This HTML lives on an application server behind a firewall. You can't change it even if you wanted to. You have to be a really good hacker. But if you can change it, then you're in the wrong class. You have to give me lessons. Okay, on that note, let's go and look at the practice test case we're going to be doing. Okay, we're going to log in. I'm reminding you your username and password. Then we're going to click on PIM. So when you log in, so far we haven't navigated anywhere. We just right-clicked and logged out. But you'll see that there's a tab that says PIM on it. And I'll also show you, so that's fine. You'll click on PIM. You will see an Add button. All right, you'll see an Add button. You will click it, and that will take you to an Add Employee page. All right, so essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding an employee. All right, so you're going to enter employee, first name. You're going to enter employee last name, and you're going to save. So far, so good? Okay. Now, once you add that employee, you're going to go, oh, I forgot to give my employee a middle name. No, sorry. Yeah, I forgot to give my employee a middle name. But when you're on the personal details page, you're going to realize that employee middle name is not editable. And part of your test case is to check that it's not editable. You actually want to be able to create an employee, go to the personal details page, and have all the information not editable, right? But when you go to right-click, because you want to add assert, not editable, when you go to right-click, you will find that you don't have that command. In fact, you will find that you can't even right-click on anything. You're just going to be like, oh, this sucks, all right? You will click on the edit button. You will enter a middle name, and now you want to check that it's editable. All right? You will right-click. It will right-click, but still that command won't be there. And you will be like, oh, that sucks. Right? You will enter middle name. You will save. It will again become not editable. You will move on. Do all the things I'll show you. Assert that the person's middle name got updated and log out. What's the point of this big story? There will be 3 situations where you won't be able to either add the command you want or even right-click to access the commands you want. All right? You have to remember the spot, and if you are able to add a command, choose something else. Right? If you're not able to add a command, just remember the spot. And after you're finished recording, you will come back and add it manually. Deal? I'm going to do it right now. You guys will watch. It will make more sense. And afterwards, you can all debug and yourself add the command. All right? My Selenium Ide is open. To open a new test case, you just say File, New Test Case. Right? Actually, yeah, File, New Test Case should be working fine. And then just make sure you start recording, right? Because you don't want to do all your hard work and not be recording. That will be not so happy scenario. So you're going to log in. And then you're going to click on PIM. So I know it's tempting to go try to click on one of these. Just click on the PIM. And then you have a green button called Add. You will add a person. You will not add a middle name. Ellie. Let's see. I forgot my own steps. Yeah, okay. So you will add an employee and you will click Save. All right. And you will be taken to the personal details page. So far, nothing fancy. You're just doing your steps. Done, 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 done. Save. Good, right? Now, I'm trying to, see right now, I'm trying to click on this. Nothing happens. Well, that works actually, but that didn't happen. I want to right click here, right? It gives me some commands. All I have is assert title, verify title, wait for title, and store title. None of them are what I want. And I can't even add the other commands. The other commands are not even coming up. They're just, it used to be this menu didn't open up. I think the new version it opens up, but it used to be it didn't even open up. So that's why I'm surprised. Okay? So I'm going to be like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to look at my test case. So I looked at it, right? And I see that right here after I said click and wait button save, that's the first location where I want to be able to insert my new command. All right? In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not even going to stop recording. I'm just going to say insert new comment, and I'm going to say add not editable command here. All right? I'm going to leave myself a little comment. I'm going to make my life easier. And then I'm going to continue recording. So again, I didn't even turn off my recording. I'm still recording. I just added a comment and I keep going. I'm going to click on the edit button. I'm going to add myself a middle name. And then I'm going to say, oh, look, it's editable. Well, let me see. Sorry, I should have said check editable first and then enter the name, right? So I'm going to right click, and now I do have all those commands. guys see them? But do you see one that's called assert editable? Is there one called assert editable? There's assert element present, and there's assert text and assert value, but there's no assert editable. So what's my best option here? I can do assert element present, or I can do assert value, doesn't matter, right? But I want to choose something with a locator, essentially, right? So I'm going to say, you know what, assert element present is almost like assert editable. It's kind of like checking the element is in a certain state. Yeah? You guys agree? Maybe? But does it really matter which one I choose? It's the same locator. You guys see that it's the same locator? It's the same stuff, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to add it. I'm going to say, okay, that's good enough. I'm going to add my middle name. I should have done it. I should have been assert editable first, then add the name. Does that make sense? I messed up my steps. And then I'm going to say, all right, I did what I was supposed to do. I'm going to save again. All right. In fact, oops, didn't have enough time for that one. Oh, I did. Look, if you're fast enough, you can even catch that successfully saved message, right? And then can I edit this again now? Can I check if it's editable once I save it?
Yes.
What do you think? Still no editable command, right? Still not working for me. So again, if you want to, go back to your script, and you can add yourself a little comment. All right, say, oh, add not editable here as well. And then after that, you can just, let's see, what do I want to do? I think I'll modify this. No. You can just log out. All right? Just log out. So, what was going to be the point of our test case? Our test case is to check that once we enter user data, it's protected. All right? You can only edit it if you say edit. Otherwise, it's not editable. All right? Once you edit it and save, it again becomes not editable. You can't edit it. All right? Make sense? And that's it. That's our test case. Now, once I stop recording, see, I'm going to stop recording. This is now where I can go back and I can change my command. So I remember that I added assert element present. But instead of assert element present, what command did I really want to add? Yeah, I wanted to check that the field is editable. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say E. And there's editable. And once I choose it, I'm going to look at the reference tab and make sure that I have the correct parameters. It says I only need one. And I go over here and I only have one. One. That's good. Don't have to change anything. So I'm good here. Right? Now, what do you think I should do for this one and for this one? So see, it says add not editable command here. Add not editable command here. What should I do there? Yeah. So I can either right click and say insert new command and add it. Or I can actually, and this is kind of a cheat, I can actually copy this guy. So I can say copy and I can paste. All right? Doesn't matter if you paste above the comment or below. You're going to remove the comment, so it's fine. And I can just change this. I can just say not editable. That's it. All right? So it's easy. Got it? What's the point of us doing this? We're learning that sometimes the commands need to be added or edited manually. Okay? Does everybody understand what they're doing? Yes? Okay. Yes.
How do we know that the target for the editable middle name is the same, like the locator for the editable middle name is the same as the one for the one that's not editable?
So that's the thing. A locator only refers to the element. There's different actions you can perform on an element, right? But it's still the same element.
It's not loading a new page.
So that's the thing, right? We are interacting only with that middle name text field, right? It doesn't matter whether you want to enter text into it, so say type, or you are checking that it's there, or you want to assert that it contains a specific text. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do to it, you're still only interacting with it.
I guess I'm saying, like, Because it could be set up so that you load a different page where it's described in a different way. So in this case, your uneditable one might look like on the HTML different.
I see what you're asking. Okay, I understand
This
now.
happens to be the same.
In this case, it literally, that button,
Yeah.
it literally switches just a property on that HTML tag. So yeah, there's
Okay,
no
so
new
wouldn't
page.
always work for anything like this, but it just happens to be that you're
Right,
not reloading
but
for
in
the
this
whole thing.
specific case,
Okay, cool.
yeah. In this case, but in that case, but in this case, but in that case. So, and then last class I taught, we had a lady working for a company that had a developer that really wanted to show off. So he would do all these crazy UI things, like you would see the text, but it would be nowhere in the HTML. He would be like loading it from CSS through some kind of scripts or something. It was just like, why?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the company where I worked, it was more like, we need to put tags in.
yeah. So sometimes you get in situations where people just want to be creative and show off and make your life hell, and there's nothing you can do.
So, the editable thing, right? When you first say it is editable or not editable, when you added the comment the first time, you added it toward the bottom of everything. Is there a reason why, or it doesn't matter? Because
That
it's
was-
a login and register.
I just know that that was the place. So I recorded, right? And I knew that at that place in my script, I needed to check that something is not editable, right? Because I know that this is the point. I know it's the very bottom, right? Because I haven't recorded anything else. That's how I knew it was going to be on the bottom. Make sense? Because it only records as I make steps. If I would have already recorded something else and something else, something else,
Then you would have to go back and.
then I would have to, yeah, do in the
Is it
middle.
possible to make, like you just showed us before the break, it's basically possible to add them anywhere if needed?
Absolutely. And I just did that right now, right? So I changed that command that I added that's the wrong one, and then I just pasted it into a different location. So you can drag and drop these up and down. They're completely not attached.
Do
Yeah.
I need to delete whatever I did before the break because you were saying that it kind of runs everything? Do I need to delete what we did before?
No. You can save that test case. To save it, there's actually two options on top. All right. It doesn't matter which one you choose to save it. Just don't choose one of these two. Okay. This is test suite. Test suite saves what's inside this panel. You want to choose the top options, all right? So to save your test case, save test case as, give it a name, you're good to go. HTML, .html.
So you're saying that Assert edible, right? I cannot see anywhere. Because it was previously it was allowed.
Right.
That one was allowed.
Right, so here's the fun part. The field you're trying to check whether it's editable or not editable is the same field you're entering the middle name into. So technically, you already have the locator for it. You see that? And that's really the only information you need. So before you enter your middle name in it, all you want to do is just check that it's editable. So it's going to be the same locator, just a different command. Make sense?
Okay.
So really what you can do is you can do this and just change this to assert editable. That makes sense?
Oh, okay.
And then you just won't need this part because it only takes one parameter. So go ahead and enter assert editable. You're performing that operation on the same element, same field on the page as you entering text.
Okay.
So the locator is going to be the same. Does that make sense?
So
So it's basically like you saying, you going home and your husband going home, and still your home, right? It's still the same address. So that's the thing here. It's same address, just two different actions on the same address. Yeah.
and after that, just
So this is you checking that it's editable, but once you save, it has to become not editable. So you kind of add a not editable command there. But it's still the same field, right? So locator is the same.
okay, just before SP and after
Before
SP,
SP and after save.
After save, I should add
After save, not editable. Before SP, editable. In the PowerPoint, you actually have the whole solution posted. You can see what a manual test case would look like on the left and what an automated test case looks like on the right. So you guys, I think, are all now pretty familiar with manual test cases, right? So this is how you can draw the correlation, all right? The one-to-one comparison. This is the solution you should have at the end, all right? Well, I mean, plus minus the last name and first name and middle name. But more or less, this is what it should look like. Let's go quickly through the commands. So we have our login and submit. Once we're inside, we're going to click on menu PIM, enter first name and last name, and click the save button. But then something weird happens. Aren't we clicking the same button twice? Is that weird? So don't be confused. See, we're doing click and wait. Whenever you see and wait, it means wait for page to reload. That means we're actually on a different page now. And the different page happens to have a button with the same locator, and that's fine. That's not a big deal. So we're going to click on that save button, but it's actually, the locator is weird. It's actually that edit button. That button is called save, but it has an edit tag. And when you click on it, it turns to have save on it, and then once you click on it again, it turns to edit again. So don't be confused by this part. I'm specifically pointing it out to show you that even though the locator is the same, the two pages are different. All right? We're good? So we are going to click save on the add employee page. It's going to take us to the personal details page. On the personal details page, we're going to click that button, right? The only big button it has. We're going to make sure that the field became editable. We're going to edit it. Okay? Yes, enter. Gosh, I'm switching to Russian now. This is bad. Da, yes. Okay, we're going to edit that field. We are going to do what? Click the save button. That actually refreshes the page, right? Because I see and wait. Can you see that? And then we're going to assert that that field is not editable after I saved my information. We want that. We don't want that information to just be editable randomly. We want to have that extra safety. I also, in my script, added assert value to make sure that the value actually got saved correctly. We're going to add that manually right now, just to practice. All right? And then I'm going to click welcome menu and log out. Right? So far, so good. So more or less, your stuff should look exactly the same, except for this one line of code. So I'm going to show you right now. Yes?
When you did it from the first time, you did assert to not editable.
Yeah, I did another one here.
Also, right?
Yes, so I also did assert not editable, click save, assert editable, type, click save, assert not editable. Yes, I did 3. But that's fine.
The assert editable is you added it by right click on the page.
I could not add either one of those.
No, okay. Okay, you added
but
all of them manually.
I added a placeholder by choosing a different command.
Okay.
All right?
Oh, yeah.
And then I manually changed it.
Okay.
It doesn't matter how you do it. If you write down on the piece of paper which line it is, or if you add a comment, or if you add a different command and you change it later, just as long as you understand, and this is for everybody, right? The point of this entire exercise, right? Why are we doing this? Is to teach you that sometimes the command you wish to use is just not available. And you will have to manually add it. Fact of life, right? That's it. That's why we're doing this, right? We're not doing this because it's busy work. We're trying to learn how to figure out where a command needs to be inserted and how to insert it. That's it.
And it matters when you exactly.
Of course. Of course. It's just like, you can't check that you're at home until you're at home. You can't be like in here at Portnoy being like, this doesn't look like my house, right? So you have to be at the right place at the right time in order to perform the correct check, right?
My point is then by doing this, what will happen the next time it doesn't make any difference. The next time I log into Orange, it's going to be the same thing.
It's going to be the same UI, so it's going to be the same behavior. Unless I actually go and change the UI, which changes the behavior, in which case, yes, you're going to have to change your test case. So let's talk about that, by the way. The scripts you're recording right now are in no way modifying the application, okay? They are acting exactly, they're performing your job, all right? There's no difference between you going and clicking a button in the browser or you writing a little code to go and click a button in the browser. Just like you clicking on the button and entering text will not change the website, your code will not be able to change the website. So you're completely safe there. You don't have to worry about it, right? Now, if you always come to a website, let's talk about Gmail. Everybody uses Gmail, right? It used to be you came to Gmail, you had a username and password. Now you come to the Gmail and it has just username. You have to click the next button to enter password, right? Did the behavior of the website change? No, the behavior changed. You're no longer entering two things on the same page. You're entering one. You used to do type, type, click. Now you're doing type, click, type, click. Did your behavior change? So that means if you had a script, would the script have to change?
Yes.
So, yes. If somebody changes the website, you will have to update your script. If nobody changes the website, you don't have to update your script. Your script, once it runs perfectly the first time, will continue running perfectly until somebody changes the website, right? So that's the cool part. That's why we debug until everything is green, and then we just sit back and hope that nobody changes the website.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask, what do we do if we get the red ones?
You debug. You debug. Okay, so right now, at this stage, there are only two things that can go wrong with your script, all right? So it's pretty easy to debug. Number one, when you were recording, you recorded some extra commands that shouldn't be there, all right? Number two, there's some kind of waiting issue, all right? Either the connection here is slow, so your script is timing out, or when you recorded, it didn't add a click and wait where it needed to add and wait. It just added click. And so it's timing out. It's basically saying, I'm sorry. And we're going to actually talk in a second about how to figure out which one is which. But most of the time, if it says timeout, exception, like, did you guys see the log? Do you read the red letters? It says timeout. It usually means either I have already waited, because it's click and wait, and I timed out, or I should be waiting, and I'm not waiting. All right, so basically you can always add click and wait, see if it fixes it, and then remove it if it doesn't. That's basically it, right? Okay, let's do the next one. Oh no, sorry, we're not done with this one. Sorry, 1 second. Where's my test case? Okay, so I added all of my commands, right? So I added my assert not editable here, and I added my assert not editable here. And I removed my two comments. So I have my script, right? But then at the end, after I was done doing my test case, I was like, oh, shoot. I really should have asserted that once I saved, not only is that the field is no longer editable, but that the stuff I entered into it actually got saved, right? Because it would kind of suck if I entered some stuff in, clicked the save button, and nothing got saved. Yeah, the field was not editable, but it also didn't save anything. Great, right? That's a bug. So where in my script, and I already showed you the answer, but try to remember, where in my script do you think I have to add the check text is part of the field command? So like, where do I add that check? Can you figure out from looking at the code where I need to check that the text actually has been saved? Right. After here, right? Yeah. And maybe even after here, I'm thinking, right? Now, that's all nice and good. But right now, I'm looking at my screen, and my screen is in a completely different place, right, than my code. So what you can do, actually we talk about this next week usually, but I'll go through it today and then again next week, is you can set a breakpoint. All right, now what is a breakpoint? A breakpoint is a little mark you can put in your script, and you can run your script. When it gets to that mark, it will stop executing. It will pause. And so you can then continue to interact with the UI. It will literally get you to that place. That make sense? So how do you set a breakpoint? Well, there's two ways. You can right-click and say toggle breakpoint, or you see how it says B? Yeah. So you can just select a line and press B. I find clicking the key B is a lot easier than right-clicking and selecting. So I usually just use B. Now to remove a breakpoint, look on the left. You see how there's a little pause sign? To remove a breakpoint, I just press B again. So B, 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 see? On, off, on, off. So I'm going to set a breakpoint right here, and I'm going to run my script all the way to here. All right? Just going to, don't ask me what I'm doing. I'm totally being like creative right now. All right, see? So it ran through, and I know you can't see my colors, but it says green, 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 green. And then when it gets over here, it's yellow. And it paused. All right? And when I look over here, I'm on the correct screen. So this is the screen after which I click save, right? I want to make sure that this text is saved, right? So here I can now just, well, that failed for some reason. It should have paused, but it failed. Here I can just now manually add that command. Now remember, I don't have to be recording to add an assert, right? I played my script to the correct place, so now the place in my script and the place in my UI match, right? So all I have to do now is just manually right-click and try to find an assert that will work, right? But I'm kind of out of luck. It's actually not a good idea. Okay, how about next time? Sorry. Okay, I'll explain why I don't want to do it today. There's a difference between assert text and assert value, and I have to talk about HTML in order to explain the difference, and that's more than the 11-minute thing that we have left, all right? You guys have homework, so I need to explain something else for you to be able to do homework. So let's cover that right now in the next 11 minutes. And then the assert value versus assert text, I'll explain next week. Deal?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just, never mind. But at least you know how to set a breakpoint if you need to do that. Now, your homework sounds a lot harder than it actually is. Homework. If you go to day 1, there's a homework TXT file. The first part is pretty much exactly what you did. The next part is adding a job title, all right? So here's how it works. Once you add your employee, right, you get taken to personal details page, right? But if you scroll a little bit down, there's a job link. So instead of you clicking around here like we just did, you will click on the job link. I'm going to get taken to this screen, right? So far, so good? These are not editable, all right? But you don't need to check if they're editable. That's not part of this exercise. The point of this exercise is to assign employee status and job title, right? So you're going to go here. You're going to assign a job title. You're going to go here. You're going to assign a job status, right? Or employment status, right? You will save. And then you want to be able to find this employee. You want to find them in the PIM field and make sure that it says what you selected. All right? So you're going to save this. You're going to go back. Hold on. Let me just see what the employee was. 4194. You're going to go back to PIM. You're going to say, I want to look for, what did I say it was? 4192? 4192? I'm going to say search. And I'm going to say, okay, look. It does say QA engineer. It does say full-time. Now, how do I do that? How do I check that it says QA engineer? I right-click, right? I right-click. And what do I say? Assert text, right? And I go over here and I say, assert text. And if you're very extra, special, you can always check the first name and last name are as well to match, right? So that's what it says. It basically says assign employee status. If you want to do, you can choose join date. This is not actually important. Save. Go to PIM. You don't actually have to do PIM employee list. Just click on PIM, all right? And then search for the employee using stored code, right? And then verify employee job title, verify employee status, log out. So far so good? Everybody understood the actions? Now, remember how I just tried to remember that number and I totally couldn't remember it? And not only that, but every single time you run your test case, a new number will be generated. So the key of this exercise is to store the number that's provided to you by the server into a variable, and then to use it as part of your search to search for that employee. That make sense? And that's what we're going to learn in the next 5 minutes. Very quickly. Okay, first of all, let's talk about what a variable is.
Placeholder.
It's Tupperware. Yeah, it's a container. But it's a magic container. It's like a Santa's bag, right? It can hold anything. It can hold a furniture. It can hold money. It can hold numbers. It can hold words. It can hold books. It can hold anything. All right? It's a container. And most of the time, it looks like this. You give a name to the container, my underscore container. Okay, it doesn't have to be called that. All right? My container. And then you say equals, and you assign something into it. You put 15 inside it. Or you can put a word inside it. Right? Or you can put a bunch of numbers inside it. All right? Make sense? We can talk about this a lot. But what you have to understand is it's a combination of value and container. Now, a container has to have a name, and that's the variable name, right? So variable equals container, variable name equals name of the container, and value equals what you store into the container. So far, so good? Yeah, okay. In Selenium Ide, to create the container, you're going to use command store. All right? Now, store comes in flavors. It comes in a plain flavor, like vanilla, right? It also comes in the store text flavor, if you want to store text. And it also comes in the store value container, if you want to store value. Again, we haven't talked about text versus value right now, so you're just going to have to trust me which one to use. All right? In this case, you're going to actually use store value. All right? But just trust me on it for now. I'll explain why next week. All right?
S is a capital, right? Does that matter? Case sensitive?
Yes, it is case sensitive, and that's actually my lowercase s. Sorry. But this is uppercase, and this is uppercase. My uppercase s's are obnoxious. So if you see something that's obnoxiously big, then that's a capital S. All right, so having said that, here's our third test case, all right? Our third test case is almost identical to the one we just did, right? The only difference is that when you're adding that employee, you actually care about that employee code. So this whole time you didn't care about the employee code, right? This time you will care. This time when you're adding the employee, you will also not only enter first name and last name, but you will right-click on the employee code and you will say store, all right? And you will have two options, store text and store value, and you will choose store value, all right? And then something magical will happen. It will open up a dialog and it will say, what is the variable name you would like to use? Or, well, not in those words. It's going to say choose variable name, something like that. You're going to enter a name. You're not going to enter what you're trying to store. Does everybody understand that? You're not entering the value you're trying to store. You're entering a name for the container that will be used to store. Does that make sense? So if you're storing employee code, what do you think is a good name for the container? Employee num, employee ID, employee code, emp ID, whatever, right? But just don't call it like Apple or something. Call it something that makes sense. Good? And then later on, you just keep recording as if nothing happened. When you perform that search, you still have to remember the first time when you're recording what it is that the employee code was. But after you stop recording, that's when you modify manually your code and you use the variable to perform the search. All right, here we go. We're recording. I'm going to log in. Password. Okay, logged in. Just like last time, PIM, add employee. Nothing new here, right? Nothing new? I'm going to enter a first name. Mickey what? I don't want to do mouse. I already have a mouse.
Mickey Lucky.
Okay, Mickey Lucky. All right, and now you see this guy? We're going to right click on it and we're going to say store value. You guys see that? Now, okay, fine. I told you I'm not going to explain to it right now, but I will point it out. Another reason you know this is the correct command to use is because this one has a number after it and store text doesn't. This will actually show you what will get stored. And you obviously want to store the number. You don't want to store nothing. Make sense? So if in doubt, right now I'm telling you, do it. But if you're doing this on your own and you're like, it's telling you which one is the correct one. All right? Sometimes the number will actually appear here, and this one will have nothing. Okay? So look at what it tells you and pick the one that actually has the number. Right? Because that's the one you want. Okay, store value. Magic. See magic? It's telling you enter the name of the variable. Again, what did we decide to call it? Okay, amp ID. Good. We typed it in. We say OK. Now let's see what happens in Selenium Ide. Store value from the following location into the following container. Make sense? Do you see the actual value anywhere that we stored? No, it's in memory. It's floating around. It's not part of your code. That's a good thing. We don't want it hard-coded anywhere, right? It's in there. Now, because it didn't write it down, you have to write it down in your brain, 4336 right now, all right? Because the next step you're going to do after you click Save, 4336, right, is you're going to go back to PIM, click on PIM, and you're going to say 4336. You're going to say Search, and you're going to assert that it's Mikey, and you're going to assert that it's Lucky. All right? And then you will simply, sorry, just checking that it's recording, and then you will simply log out. So far, so good? You think you're done? Not really. There's one last tiny step, well, besides stop recording, and that's to get rid of this hard-coded number. All right? Because you don't want to keep adding different employees under the same name and always check the same number. This should be a different number each time. All right? So now what you have to do is you go over here where it says 4336, and you want to replace the hard-coded value with the container name. Make sense to everybody? We stored something into the container, something, we don't know what it is, and that something should be used to perform the search. That make sense? Yeah. So if next time we come to this page and it says 9912, we don't want to look for 4336. We want to look for 9912. And that's what's going to be replaced from the container. All right, so how do I do that? I go here and I manually delete, and I replace it, this is important, with $, curly bracket, amp ID, curly bracket. All right? Now some people might say, why the fancy curly brackets, right? Well, Selenium Ide cannot tell the difference between you saying hello and you saying, I'm a variable whose name is hello, all right? It can't. That's what the curly brackets and the $sign are for. Make sense? This is how it's able to tell the difference between I'm a regular word and I'm a name of the container, all right? So if you want to say, no, not a regular word, container name, you have to say $ curly brackets. And if you just want it to be like, yeah, please type in EMPID, then you just EMPID. If you want to be able to say, no, go find that, get the value out, and use it, $ curly brackets. So far, so good?
So that's parentheses or curly brackets?
Curly brackets, very important. Curly brackets. But, all of it is part of your PowerPoint. So if you go home and you go over your PowerPoints again, not even the other ones, just the last one, the practice test cases. Every single detail is here, all right? It tells you what to do, what to put, where to put it. It's very detailed. You'll be fine, I promise, okay? So now your test case is more or less complete. If you play it back, it will no longer use 4336. It will now each time use a different value. Now, last tiny little point. When you're running this, you can't really tell what it stored and what it entered, unless you watch it very carefully. So if you want to give yourself that extra fuzzy feeling of, oh, it's actually doing what it's supposed to do, you can force it to print into the console the number it used. And for that, we're going to use a command called echo. And you just use the variable name like you did here, right? So you're just going to do $, curly brackets, amp ID. It doesn't matter whether you print it before or after the type, as long as you print it after you save it, all right? You can even move this echo directly after you save it, right? But you can't print something that you haven't saved yet. That's the only rule. So save it first, and then anywhere in the script you want to print it. You want to print it at the very end? Great. You want to print it before you use it? Great. It doesn't matter. So that's how you do it. So I'm going to quickly play it, and after that we're done. You can do the same thing, and I'll help you debug. Sorry. I'm cheating you guys to make this faster, so just bear with me. So see, it's 4338, and if I look over here in the logs, sorry, it's a lot of logs. You see, echo 4338. It's useful to clear your logs every now and then. That way you don't have to scroll through a lot, but it printed out for you the number it saved. Okay, so it wasn't 4336, it's now 4338. All right, see you next week.